Hey y'all, welcome to the Standing on Business podcast, where ambition meets action. From career moves to life lessons,
our podcast is dedicated to supporting you as you navigate both the personal and professional growth journey.
Ultimately giving you the confidence to always stand in your truth.
Hey y'all, you're listening to another episode of the Standing on Business podcast. I'm your co-host Bianca.
And I'm your co-host Amari.
And we cannot wait to talk to y'all today. So we're going to talk about a good topic that everybody probably has debated once or twice with a friend. So everybody knows that hustle culture is a big thing happening right now. And it's something that's talked about a lot on social media. So we've seen the content, quit your day job and chase your dreams. But what if the smartest thing to do is to really just stay a little bit longer? So we want to dive into that because we've seen in today's day and age, like, even the safe jobs aren't really that safe anymore.
Girl.
Yes.
I feel like every week it's a new headline of like layoffs here, layoffs there, whether it's in tech, whether it's in education. I think, I don't know necessarily when this will air, but we're in a time frame and landscape where the new HSS changes have come about. And baby, basically people are losing their jobs like they've never lost those jobs before. So I think for us, it's just really important today for us to highlight and debunk some of the misunderstandings or stereotypes or like the fears of corporate, but also highlighting it of like, it's okay to take a traditional track in today's world. It's okay to be a corporate girly or guy.
And so also to that, we know that sometimes people think their job is a trap and we don't want it to seem like that. We really want to highlight and show you that your 9 to 5 is definitely your probably most underutilized tool. So in this episode, we're going to talk all about maximizing your job, using your funds to fund that side hustle, and also gain the wisdom and, being a stronger business owner, creative entrepreneur. We both know so many people and even ourselves diving into entrepreneurial ventures, but we are still very much corporate girlies. And
100%.
Yes, and we've met in that space and we've thrived in that space. So I can't wait to get into this conversation.
No, I'm excited too. It's a perfect segue because I think, so that's a thing. Like Bianca and I by trade are corporate girls. And it's so funny now that we have the podcast and like, for me specifically, because Bianca's been in this space of entrepreneurship and the creative journey for a little bit longer than me. But it's so funny now that I have to I have something to promo. Like I think about it in the sense of like when people used to have viral tweets and they'd be like, oh, what do you want to share? And it's like, I don't have anything. I now have a thing, but but it's funny because people don't realize now that by trade, schools, degrees, certifications down. Like I know what I'm talking about, which is why I've chosen to open my mouth. But in that, I think, like I said, you create a perfect segue into the discussion around why you don't need to quit your day job. And not just because, we're not in an economic climate that supports that, but I think that there's so much value in a corporate track or a traditional track. And yes, there's like the old school, like you need a 9 to 5. I think we talked about it in a previous episode.
Right.
But no, like we talked about that. I think in a previous episode, we discussed like kind of the need for a 9 to 5. And, there are some outdated thoughts around that of like, oh, you stay in the same job forever, or you stay here and you need to get your pension. Like maybe that's not the landscape or the model that you lean into for current day. But I do think that there is something super powerful about allowing your 9 to 5 to be your launch pad and to be your foundation. And I think we live in a world where social media is at our fingertips and we see what people project in their lives. And I think a lot of times we want the feel good. We want what feels good in the moment. We want that instant gratification without things being delayed. But I think that there's so much one to learn through process, but there's so much beauty in process. I think about all of the things that like came to me easy in life that maybe
previous roles that you've had.
Not even that. I think just in life, like anything that I've gotten that was easy, I don't think that I valued it the way that I should have because what did I really do to attain it? Like what did I do to really earn this?
And your gifts.
Yes, it's like a gift. And I think beyond that too, like there's just so much that you learn in corporate, like whether that is how to have a difficult conversation or how to hire people or how to know your audience of like the way for us in being in healthcare, the way that I would speak to a group of nurses is going to be different than what I would speak to a group of physicians about, or if it was admin team, like, you know, we're administrators.
Right.
All three of those audiences are different, even if I'm having the same conversation with them. And I think that that's just something that you learn and you build on through corporate experiences.
And I think just learning how to work within a system.
Yeah.
I think like I said, I straddle the fence between, I have corporate and I have the creative entrepreneur side. So like I hear people all the time come to me like, Bianca, how do you get all these things done? And I'm just like, the consistency, the discipline, the value I've gotten from my corporate role truly has been valuable in me, you know, being able to scale. And then I'll also working within the system and learning how to do that. It's like, okay, I can create my own systems now.
Yeah.
I know 100%. How to do it. Yeah.
Yes. And it's funny because, and I guess we'll talk about this in another episode, but it's almost kind of like Robin Hood. Like you go to these big corporations and you learn their systems and you know, acquire the skills and you grow and you develop. And then whether you take that skill set that you've learned and go to another corporate job, or if you start your own thing, at least you have a foundation that, you know, can move you forward in the right direction that may not have been available or accessible to you before.
Right.
I think another thing that I want to add is I love the foundation of corporate being stability.
I agree.
I think in corporate,
look, we gotta really harp on that because people, and like I said, it's just different creators I know that may be full on entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I kind of have that luxury of having my corporate job and still using that, which we'll talk about a little bit later, of like funding the things I want and not having to worry about like, okay, where's my next check coming? Because those entrepreneur checks, those creative checks, those brand deals don't come till 3 months later, 60 days plus, depending on what your contract's like.
And what Bianca is saying is not that like when you start your journey in 3 to 6 months, you're going to get this. No, she's saying you could be well-versed, experienced, tenured in entrepreneurship for 10 years.
Yes.
And the deals that you sign, you may not see that check for another 90 days if that's the way that your contract is set up.
Correct.
And so I think that there's something to be said about that of like with a traditional corporate job, it is a 9 to 5. You may be like 8 to 8, like depending on what your role calls for. But whatever is in that duties and responsibilities that are listed when you apply for the role, that's pretty much your scope of practice. And in layman's terms, essentially, that is the bubble in which you live in for the role that you do. And if anything is out of scope, that's another discussion for another time. You shouldn't be doing that unless you're getting paid. But
they put all the as needed.
Yeah, as needed is just as filler for like, let me tack this on. Let me see what else we can get you to do. But it does give you a certain peace of mind knowing like, hey, I have a schedule. I know that by this time on Monday through Friday, I'm done by 6 o'clock and I can go work out. I can go grocery shopping. I can go shopping, you know. I think too, when you plan for like vacations or special events, it's not as, what is the word that I'm looking for?
I guess worrisome almost.
Not even that. Well, I guess anxiety inducing, but I think more so it's not like as ad hoc of like, oh, well, let me get back to you or let me see. You know how much PTO. On. Yeah, you know what it is that you have in your allotment. You know what you can do, what you can't do. And I think when it comes to, and we talk about this, like the difference between work-life balance versus harmony, whichever way you look at it, I think having a corporate role, if you're in the right space and you found a role that has a good fit for you culturally, the job that you're doing is fulfilling, it creates the space and the capacity for you to have that work-life balance to where you can spend more time with your friends and family or going to vacation or just taking a mental health day. Yeah, like for hobbies of like, I want to go golfing today or I want to go check out this museum.
And I know I'm off.
And I know that I'm off and like there's nothing that anyone needs from me until I clock back in. And I think, you know, there's just something to be said about not having to operate in a state of desperation. And I think like we'll definitely talk about that more in our prioritizing your pivot episode. But I think when you're in that entrepreneurial landscape or that creative landscape and you're, for lack of a better term, a starving artist, sometimes those boundaries or your integrity, I think it becomes a little blurred. It's not as black and white when you haven't had a check in 3 weeks and the money's running out, you're depleting your savings or having to pull from different funds, or if you're investing in something that's depreciating at the time, because investments, sometimes you don't see the ROI.
Not right away.
For some time. Yeah. So...
And to that point of just what you're saying is the value of it. And we're not saying that we're just talking about, because we say corporate sometimes, I think people think we're excluding like those that were nurses or maybe those that are more in not a labor field, but like we're just talking about people in general that you're working a 9 to 5. It is whatever you do, skilled labor to you're in the office. Like we're talking to everyone. And we want to make sure like, we're talking about, and we're about to get into it, those skills that we've learned that really help us run our own business at this point. So I guess to you, what transferable skills have you been able to gain or acquire in your previous roles that you feel like has helped us, helped you, and all the ventures? You have a lot of great stuff going on.
We do. And I couldn't have done it all without having my experiences in a corporate traditional field. Because I think it's really important, and maybe I've said this in previous episodes, but I think it's super important for you to know your business from the ground up. Because if you ever do want to be in leadership, or if you ever do want to go out and just create your own thing, you need to know what are the systems and processes and protocols and policies that have this entire infrastructure stand up on stable feet. I think a lot of times people who pivot straight into entrepreneurship, they learn their lessons through experience. And I think that that's great, because it resonates of like, I bumped my head or I burned my hand on that gas, I don't want to do that again. But I also don't think that you have to learn all your lessons
the hard way
through bumps and bruises. No. And I think corporate, again, going back to culture and fit and role, but I think when you land a sweet spot in corporate, you get to build all of those skill sets, whether that's project management or strategy or budget planning or operations. You learn all of that through those environments. And so I think to answer your question for me, and I guess just advice that I would give is that I always wanted to be a sponge. I never really cared about the title of what I was doing. I more so just wanted the experience to learn. So one of my very first internships was through the Office of Quality for Emory Healthcare in Atlanta. And basically that entire summer, I just went to different sites and did hand hygiene observations. Right. So for anyone who doesn't know what hand hygiene compliance is in healthcare, it's basically just when a physician or a nurse goes in and out of the room to see if they scrubbed it. And so did they hit the Lysol pump, the hand sanitizer before they went in, or did you see them coming out of the room just kind of washing their hands? But through that, I got to see the full gambit of specialty service lines that were offered. We had a multidisciplinary group within our quality department. So it was made up of the leadership component. So like checking to make sure staff had their competencies, they had their BCL, like they were allowed to be practicing.
Yeah, you worked with everyone.
Yes, but like we also had pharmacy, medication management, we had POCT labs. So saying that to say, it was such a robust group and I got to see what everyone did. It helped me to one streamline of like, oh, I don't want to do this or I don't want to do that. But because I had the funds of knowledge, it made me a jack of all trades going into my former role as an operational based leader, where everyone calls you with their crisis of like, this is going wrong, this is broken, this is flooded, And I think long-windedly what I'm saying is corporate taught me the skills that I needed to be resilient and to be calm and knowing that like if everything goes to crap, we will still survive if no one's died. If everyone still has all their blood counts and, we can head count and assess for everyone that came in, we're fine. And we can figure out the rest tomorrow. So I think for me, the biggest things that I've learned that I've been able to carry with me from role to role and just in life is resiliency. I'm a lot more agile. Like I'm quick to to pivot when things aren't working and failing fast, I think I'm a lot more calm. I think if you know me personally, you're like, oh yeah, she's definitely more relaxed. But I think in having to assess those like scary things of like, oh, I have a thing that's not working. I have a physician who is out of network right now or doesn't have their credentialing, or
difficult conversations.
Yeah,
you learn how to do that a lot in corporate.
Team dynamics, you learn that in corporate. You learn how to be resourceful and like, okay, let me think through this strategically of like, we have an inefficiency, but is it inefficient because it's a bother and a gripe to me, or is this really something that is breaking down our process and the downstream effect is impacting people in a way that it doesn't need to? So I think I don't know. I'm saying everything, but
these are all good things, especially like you're really showing the value in what it's done, for you. And then, if people know you, they know you're doing great things. So
it's changed my life.
They see you are an image and example of that. And I know we're going to jump into, how our 9-to-5 funds our dream. But I do want to say, as far as just like my experience of, I think I utilize how your experience with Emory, I utilize, I guess, kind of like my leadership roles to diversify my skills. So
you do a great job at that.
I intentionally did it. So I came in, like we talked about, talked about planning in a previous episode, but I feel like I've used my previous roles and intentionally went to different ones that really made me uncomfortable. And sometimes being uncomfortable is what you need. Yeah. I knew for a fact before I even finished nursing school, and we talked about this, I knew I was going into business. I always said like a slogan was, I'm going to impact people on a local level, state level, national level. And now I'm talking international and global at this point. But I knew I wanted my reach and impact to be large. So I intentionally went from the fellowship, which is a lot of project management, learned those skills, then going to operations, which you learn. We both were there learning everything, people management, relationships, then going into a very strategic role to where it's like, okay, now I'm with the executive team and now I'm having to show up in a different way. Yeah. And we both had those experiences because like, luckily we had the privilege of being able to get that executive exposure that a lot of people don't get until they're in those roles, and we've had it at such a young age.
And like let's give credence and credit to that, and like claps and snaps for the girls. It's doable, but it's not easy necessarily. And I think I love that you say that your matriculation through your corporate like primary career has been calculated or strategic. I'll say that, because I think there's only so much calculations that you can do. I think you have to kind of feed into what's available to you at the time. It is a strategy, but I do think like we'll talk about this of how your 9-to-5 kind of funds the dream, but you always knew innately what you wanted to do at the 5,000-foot level. Correct. And you were
knew
able
the purpose, knew my purpose. I was going to talk to people and impact them.
And that's why we push purpose so much, because again, these are just the building blocks. So think of it in that sense of like, these are just the bricks and the concrete that you need to be able to build up that dream. And I think, to your point, Bianca, you were very smart and attuned in knowing like, hey, I need this type of skill set. I need this type of experience. And not because I want to stay in this level or this service line or whatever for forever. But
I knew I needed it.
Yes, I know that I have a toolkit that I need to be able to fill, whether it's a screwdriver, a hammer, whatever it is. I need to have a full toolkit for what it is that I'm destined to do long term. And I think, to your point, corporate is a perfect way to get all of those tools into your like kind of your belt.
Yeah, we should have called this building your toolkit, because that's really what we're talking about.
That's what it is.
Yeah, because every little thing, even from like meetings that you're in, everything is, they are showing you your corporate job or your job is showing you how to run a business.
Yeah. And Bianca, I think you make a really great point, and it segues into our next point of like, your 9-to-5 really funds your dream. And I think that's an interesting concept, because people often, it's polarizing, right? Like corporate is polarizing. I think you either look at it as like a cage and you're chained to that, and you can't get out of it once you start the rat race. And that's another colloquial term of like the rat race. Other people I think are like, oh no, I've been a boss since I was 5. I have my coffee cup. I need a schedule. I'm up by 4 o'clock. I'm in the gym by 6. Like, either end of the spectrum of where you sit and you stand, I think it's important to realize that corporate is not the enemy. And it really could be, or has the potential to be, your first investor, and a free training ground, and especially in this economy.
Right. You have to. I feel like just from with my start, I feel like we were on the phone when I started the NOLA Collective. Did I tell you this?
Yes. No, I remember. And like, I can't get sentimental because we will cry, but I do remember that.
So you were on the phone with me, literally starting my business, and then now look at us. We have Staying on Business podcast. But to the point of like, I had to, even all the ads I ran when I first started, I had 300 followers, something, I don't know, something small. I love y'all, everybody who's been with me since the beginning, but I use my 9-to-5 funds to literally I'm still bootstrapping right now. And luckily I've been able to generate income, but really, like your point, it's like, I'm my first investor.
Yeah. So, and I like that because I think it's important to realize that having a corporate job is one of the smartest ways to build your foundation while you're still strategizing your pivot. I think another thing too is, this job, like we said, it doesn't just pay your bills, it's your seed money. And so as you're thinking about like, okay, what do I want to do? And then you're incrementally figuring out the pieces of your brand, whether that's marketing or merch or, marketing is like both the visual ads, but also like getting out there. Like you can have more time and it's not as stressful. I think when you have two things working simultaneously, and the first thing is what's funding that second complementary venture. I don't know.
It's a foundation. And then you started to say it, but besides it just being your investor for your hobbies, your passion project, it's also like your investor obviously to your future. Wealth building. So we've talked about that offline, but it is, I feel better now, and especially because I do want to be a full-time entrepreneur. So it's just like I'm luckily I have a stability in my retirement funds. I have stability and foundation and other things that I've gotten through my 9-to-5 role.
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing, and I think another thing to think about just on the more formal piece is like using this to have your benefits. Like we're in such an uncertain time right now. I think it's important for people to be forward thinking, because I think a lot of times, especially in our generation and below, it's like, oh, that'll never happen to me, or I'll never experience that. And I feel like ever since I was in like first grade experiencing 9/11, it's been canon event after canon event after like you need that stability. And I think this is one of the best ways for you to receive those benefits, whether that's retirement, insurance, wellness resources. I know for me, like when the world has gotten too tough, and I'll be honest and candid in saying it, I've utilized EAP resources, which a lot of organizations have. It's your employee assistance program. Also, while we were living in New Orleans, we were affected by a lot of natural disasters. So our corporate jobs had funding to help provide some relief during those really difficult times. On top of, therapy and counseling services, or
they housed some people. There were meals. It was just a lot. Because we were in such a big organization, which was, we had the privilege and we're very grateful for it. But to your point, it's just, is a lot of additional arms lifting you up. When it comes to your 9-to-5 and just having it be there, even though I know sometimes people still have that stigma, or it's like, I'm trying to get out, but sometimes you're okay right there. And you're okay right there for a little bit. You don't always have to leap.
I think, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's really a good comparison to like when you're done with school and you got to go back and live with your parents for a little bit. Like, is that really what you want to do? Maybe not.
No.
But do you know that you'll have shelter? Will you have food? Will there be cable? Will it be comfortable? And like, it's not like you're going into your own spot trying to figure out all of that stuff on your own. And I think, yes, we all want the freedom to do whatever it is that we want to do, what we've been called to do, what we're passionate about, what we're good at. But sometimes that's a journey. And I think being able to sit somewhere that is secure and stable while you figure out what that is and what your purpose is it is such a blessing sometimes. And you don't even realize it until you're in it, of like, wow, this really carried me through a season that could have been really hard if I didn't have that safety net of a corporate job.
And I think we're really just giving the message and like driving it home of like, don't rush to exit, because there's so many things that we are taking, like we said, the skill set, but also we talked about in previous episodes, like we've had Deborah Grimes on, we had Sunny Lee, you know, those mentors that you, and the mentors that you have gained and the network that you have grown, you are taking that and you're like, okay, I know who to call.
Yeah, it's invaluable.
It's invaluable. I know who to call for maybe if I am needing an extra investor or needing to connect with somebody else that may be in the same industry or a different industry, but at a different level or a different organization. We know people all over the country in healthcare.
No, we do.
Because of the fellowship. And people grow like you.
I was say even globally.
Yes. I was like, you've gone to New York and doing great things. So I can say I have a friend in New York at a major hospital that is doing great things, and I know I could call on her for corporate reasons, and also like, hey, what are they doing in a different state? You have real life case studies, and I think that is a good value of just maximizing the experience that we've seen, and we really see it all the time, just from our peers alone.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think the thing about it that we haven't touched on, which we touch on all the time, but I'm going to bring it back here because y'all know the podcast, y'all know how we get down. It's intentionality. I think whatever you put into something will be what you get out of it. 9 times out of 10. Now, is that always the case? No, because I'm not an always or never type of person. But I do think, if you go into corporate with a plan and with a strategy, even if you don't fully know it at the beginning, like if you learn through trial and error, because Lord knows I bumped my head a few times before I got it together and really had a defined vision of what I wanted my life to look like in a professional sense. But with corporate, it's such a gift in that way of like,
you can do anything.
You can do anything. And like, it kind of snowballs. So like, as you meet different people who have different interests, because honestly, secret, a lot of people in corporate want to do different things or have done other things and have now pivoted into their role. And so there's just such a funds of knowledge in the people that you shake hands with and that you connect with on a day-to-day, whether that's formally through a team dynamic or, a project that you have or interdisciplinary work, or if it's informal of like, hey, I just really appreciate this person and the things that they've done. I want to get to know them. Like, let me ask them for coffee. But to your point, it's expansively increased our Rolodex of whether it's someone, hey, I'm phoning a friend of like, I don't know how to do my job. Can you help me? Or if it's something bigger, and, we'll talk about that eventually of all the things that we really want to get into with our ventures. But as we're starting to figure out grant funding and figuring out, nonprofit sectors, like we now have people that we can call on and say, hey, I need help. And having that vulnerability be a thing because we've had the corporate relationship. And so they
know our worth ethic.
They vetted us and they endorse us because they believe in us.
And they know we could do great. We already done great things. And so we're moving forward and do even greater things. So it's like, yes, I want to help you. And honestly, my whole thing, and I tell people this all the time, whether you're in corporate, creative space, whatever, it's like, don't be afraid to ask, because most of the time people are willing to help you. Like you said, you just have to ask. And like, people are so shocked at like how many people just like say, yes, oh yeah, I can send you this. I can help you with this. Because people want to tell their journeys. And that's another reason why we started this podcast. People want to tell their journeys and want to be able to help other people and like just pour into, people feel good pouring into other people. Like that's like a thing, unless you're, a horrible person, but most people feel amazing just really trying to give and just like enlighten and help and do things that they wish they had.
Yeah. And I think to that point, like, it shouldn't be intimidating, because think of yourself 20 years down the line. Are you going to be someone who wants to pour back and help other people? I would hope so. But like, I say that to say those people that you look up to, whether it's for mentorship or formal guidance, they were once in your shoes trying to figure it out. And I like have leaders all the time who tell me like that never ends. Like it's not important, but it's normative to feel imposter syndrome or to feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And I think as you continue to like scale, whether that's in a corporate sector, a creative sector, or entrepreneurship, you're always going to have that question. You're always going to have it, but that's okay as long as you know who to go to in those times of vulnerability and ask like, hey, I need some advice or I need some guidance to know. And I think, you know, even if you are looking to pivot out of corporate, that's also fine because only you know your vision the way that God gave it to you. You know what you're predestined for. All we're saying in this conversation is to be mindful and smart and strategic in how you want to prioritize that pivot and your exit strategy. So for us, I think that looks like defining a timeline. Like, how much longer can you take? You know, I think for some people, and we'll have an episode on this, but some people experience corporate burnout of like, I've been in the wheel for too long, you know, and it's time for me to go. But that doesn't mean that you leave your job today because it's like, I've had enough. And you just throw all the papers up at your desk. What does that look like for a 6 to 12 month plan or a 12 to 24 month plan? What is your finances looking like? Are we getting those in order? You know, maybe we're not going on as many vacations this year because we want to plan a pivot.
Correct. The different roles that we talked about it. Like I did not know. Honestly, when I came to corporate, I did not know what I wanted to do. Yeah. My intentionality came from, I just want to learn multiple things. Yeah. So I didn't necessarily have a certain job in mind. It's just like, what can get me those different diverse skills that I'm looking to have and really transfer. So I really feel like we're, you know, just reflecting on our own, you know, journeys. And I think it's important. Like this, I love this episode. Like,
it's really nice. Yes. I'm feeling the vibes. Yeah. And so I guess with that, if we're reflecting, I think we've reflected a lot on our own journeys. And so we kind of want to pose a call to action for our listeners. For anyone who's in corporate, thinking about joining corporate, thinking about getting out of corporate, you know, I think some of the reflective questions to ask yourself post this podcast session, and maybe you take it back for a team learning or you take it in a group chat with the girls, you know, or the guys, to facilitate the discussion. But I think, you know, one question to ask is, what am I learning at work right now? And how can I apply that to my business? So is there anything that you feel like is transferable? And honestly, if the answer is no, it's probably time for you to pivot anyway, whether it's into another corporate job or into doing your own thing. If you feel like you've maximized the experience, don't stagnate yourself by feeling like you have to be committed to something that's no longer serving you. So take that inventory, do that audit and see like, where am I at right now? Benchmark it and figure out, is this helping me or hindering me from moving in the direction that I see myself going in?
Yeah. And I love the advice that you gave earlier is that, you know, you only know your journey, right? So it's like, if you see, you know, I feel like we've given a lot of wisdom in this episode, but really take and reflect and see, you know, do you have clarity with where you're going? You know, hopefully you shouldn't feel behind because like you are the only one, you know, running your race.
Yeah. Yeah. So. And I think that goes back into as well of like, are you maximizing yourself or are you merely surviving? And I think that's a deeper, more profound question that like only you can answer. Only I can answer that for Amari. Only Bianca can answer that for Bianca. But I think that's really the question to pose for yourself when thinking about, you know, are you ready to pivot or should you not quit your day job? You know, should you stay where you're at, even if it's just for a little bit longer? Or are you really good at this corporate thing? And maybe we need more innovators and free thinkers and leaders like you to help usher in the new models of corporate and what that's going to look like, because the world is changing fast. We're in a new technological age. All this AI stuff is coming out. There's predictive models coming out. Like there's just so much that's new. And even for us, the jobs that exist today, like did not exist when we were growing up and people were coming for career day and saying, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer. Like no one knew what YouTube was.
Yeah. And I say, like, you to your point, don't feel pressure either way. Like we're in a space, I feel like, to where we're like corporate girls, but then we're doing entrepreneurial ventures. But you may be like, we have friends that are like, I'm good with just clocking at 9 and getting out at 5, and that they
Yeah.
are great and they want to move up in their careers. And I feel like we've definitely touched on like moving up, the importance of networking, all these things, but now we're kind of shifting because this is where we are in
We're
life.
in this season.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're in the season.
And I think that that's important. It's important, B, because you just called on something that we talked about at the beginning of the episode that I really wanted to round out, which is like comparison is the thief of joy. So when you look to everyone else around you, or you're scrolling on your timeline, whether that's X or Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, whatever, you're seeing, you know, a highlight reel most of the time, because some people get real. But you're seeing a highlight reel of people's moments of the things that they want to show you or the things that they want acclaim for. But that doesn't mean that you're not standing on your stage and you're not hitting your marks. And I think the biggest thing to realize, whether you're looking to enter corporate or you're in corporate or you're trying to leave, is that in this world, you have a job, and that in itself is a blessing. And with that, you know, whether you're looking to build or you're looking to, you know, keep the status quo and maintain, it's the blessing of knowing that you have more support than you realize. And there's more people around you that are like-minded than maybe you may think. So whether that is, I want to be at a traditional 9 to 5 because when I clock out of here, you know, I'm a mom and I, you know, am a wife, or whatever the case may be. Or if it's like, you know, I want this 9 to 5 so that I can start teeing up my pivot into entrepreneurship or a creative journey. And this allows me to be done at 5, you know, maybe 4:30 some days.
Or 12 on Fridays.
Yeah, 12 on a Friday, depending on where you're at, what you got going on. But it creates capacity for you, I think, is really what we're trying to drive home. And I think it just having capacity and space for opportunity is always a great thing. So don't take that for granted.
No, I think that's a great way to just like wrap up this
Mellow us
episode.
out.
Yes.
Yeah. Cheers to that.
Yes. No, let's definitely cheers.
Cheers to that.
Because I feel like we've given a lot of wisdom. We talked a lot about maximizing where you are and just like not rushing to the next step.
Yeah.
But if you want to, we've already talked about the skill sets and what you can carry on to the next step. Okay. So I will definitely close this out and you'll be hearing from us very soon. But that is a wrap. You have listened to another episode of Standing on Business Podcast. I hope you've learned a lot about maximizing your 9 to 5. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at standonbusiness.pod. Watch us on YouTube and listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thank you guys for listening.
Bye.